Hi, folks. How are you? So,
Good evening.
good evening, Monica. And Maureen. And Ron. Owner. Who's owner?
It's probably Deborah, even though she's not here.
Well,
No,
it's okay. I just need to rename Deborah to myself, and you take it from there.
okay.
I got this prompt to turn on something called backlight or edge light, and I don't know how to turn it off. It's driving me crazy. Anyways, I'll just ignore it. In Zoom, it creates a halo around the Zoom screen. I don't know how that helps, but it's there. Okay. So, all right. So, I'm assuming everybody is familiar with what you're planning to do today from Eventbrite. Is that correct? Can I see a response? No? Okay. All right. I'm just going to assume everybody has. We were supposed to do this session in the fall. This was the culminating session of a three-event series that David and I did with Deborah on capitalism and climate change and sustainability. The argument was, if we live in a market economy, this is my version, David may have a different version, you can share that later. If we live in a market economy, what influence do individuals have on what the market does? That was one question. The second question was, what influence do businesses have on the market economy? And the third question was, what influences do governments and institutions have on the market economy? David, do you want to make any additions to that?
Yeah, I would add to that um, governments and organizations are made up of individuals as well. And so the question I could also ask is, what influence do individuals have on businesses and organizations vis-a-vis sustainability? And then what influence do we have on the government in terms of sustainability issues? So it's sort of like overlapping circles.
It is overlapping, sir. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So, in a different way, we were trying to parse out the individual, the firm, and the government as influencers of capitalism as we understand it in America today, which is very, very obscure. And I won't touch that subject with a 10-foot pole. If you heard the Davos speech by our president, you will understand what I'm talking about. Anyways, so Aryan, as Algeline, is that correct? Welcome, Monica. So what we're going to do really is David and I are going to, I need some indication that you folks are familiar with what's happened in this series before. Have you seen the Eventbrite details? Just tell me yes or no.
No, I have not.
Okay, then we should probably start from there. So let me share my screen. And see if I can do this properly. Nope. Nope. Okay, forget the Eventbrite description. So we did two sessions before this, and one was about what actions individuals could take to influence the market. One session was what actions firms and businesses could take to influence the market. And this one, which we were supposed to do in December, but because of miscommunication, it fell by the wayside. So we're doing a repeat of it, is about governments and public sector as players in a green market transition. And David's presentation was community influences on governments and states towards a green market transition. So we were looking at it from two different views. My point was, can governments and state public sector influence the green transition, and so in what ways and how? And David's question was, how can the community influence governments and states move towards a green transition? Is that correct, David? Am I saying it right now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's do a round of introductions, since we may not all know one another. I don't know where you folks are situated, but if you want to turn on your cameras just for this, it would be nice to see your faces. But if not, Algeline, you want to go first? Monica.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. I think Angeline is speaking now. Angeline,
Uh,
you can see the speaking first.
I see the mic on.
Go ahead.
Algeline,
Yeah.
hi. Introduce yourself, please. Oh, she dropped off.
Think we
Sorry.
lost her. Okay.
Yeah. Too much pressure. Monica, you want to go?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Harwell, and I'm with the Greater Neighborhood Alliance. And what we do, we actually build block associations, but other outside of that, we are a part of the Sustainable New Jersey. We've worked a lot with them as far as doing tree measurements and cleanups, and so we've done a few things with you guys and collaborating and trying to contribute to our environment, our tree growing, and so those type of things. Anyway, so that's
Yeah,
who
no,
I
it's good. It's good. I don't know if you've met all the others, but we'll just go around and do a quick round, and then we can start. So, Aryan Patel, you want to go next? No? Okay. Maureen?
Hey everyone, I'm Maureen. Oh, let me turn my camera on real quick. Um,
There's something personable about faces. You can't get away from that.
yeah. Yeah, I'm Maureen. I'm with Sustainable Jersey City. I just wanted to join the CGC meeting, see what it's all about. I'm excited to hear the presentation and all.
Excellent. Ron, you want to jump in now? Maybe they stepped away. Aaron, are you back? No. Okay. All right. David, do you want to share your screen first?
Sure.
Do you have the presentation or do you want me to put it
Yeah,
up?
no, I have it.
Okay.
All right, you should be able to see the screen now. Okay?
Yeah, we do. Addressing sustainability at the governmental level.
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of background for those that don't know me. I am a physicist and a theologian, and I've been working in the area of science and religion dialogue around environmental issues for quite a while, back from the 70s. So a lot of my focus has been on, how do we influence policy? And so let me talk about sort of the governmental level. That means unless you're working for government, it can be local, state, and national, or to some extent even international. Many of the basic ideas are the same. So first of all, when we're talking about sustainability, there's a whole lot of issues, especially when we take it more broadly than just sustainability in the sense of environmental sustainability. When we take a look at the justice aspects of sustainability in terms of decisions you make that perhaps only that benefit the wealthy or the rich and do it on the backs of the poor, which is often the case, that's an issue. So it's more than just creating an environment that works well for the future for some people. It's about creating a world that is better for all of us, and especially those that are those that have borne the burden of unsustainable practices for the longest period of time. And there are a great many issues that affect that. Obviously, the biggest power is in your vote if you're in a democracy. And that's more effective if you're locally because your vote has a bigger voice. But in addition to that, your power is also in your communications, especially with those that are in charge. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And there's power in your advocacy if done right. And why I say it's done right is I've noticed a trend over the years of a lot of non-governmental agencies or charitable organizations to use this idea of emailing a letter to your representative as a marketing tool. And I can tell you that for many people in the government, when they see a bazillion and one absolutely identical emails, it does not nearly have the impact of one phone call. Another mistake I've seen a lot. So when you're communicating, focus on one issue at a time. It's really tempted to call up your representative or write a letter to give a laundry list of 1,000 different items you think they're doing wrong. And that may feel really good, but it'll have almost no impact. So focusing on one issue at a time when you're talking to a representative, be it local or governmental, really helps focus the attention on something that could change. Another thing to be aware of, this is something that Ash and I have talked a lot about, know your stuff. That means not just the stuff about the topic you want to address, but about how the government works. So you're calling the person that can do something about it. How the economic system works, something we've talked about here before. So there's a reasonableness, or there's a way of your requests are something that are doable. And so, like, I'll give you an example. So one of my representatives, I'm not in Jersey City anymore, is a very far right Republican. And you would say, okay, well, then it's worthless to call him. Not at all. You're going to get their staff anyway. You get to know their staff. And if you know your opponent's arguments, what motivates them, they're not necessarily evil people, and their concerns, you can sometimes adjust your argument in a way that sort of goes on a mutual concern, and casting the language in a way that gets through the barriers. And I'll give you an example of a colleague and a friend of mine. Headed up, he's since retired, a group called the Evangelical Environmental Network. And that may seem almost an oxymoron in today's world, but it isn't necessarily. He knows that if he went into a lot of the congressmen's offices with a lot of the things that concerns him, like climate change, it wouldn't get anywhere. So what he chose to do was function on air pollution and asthma and its effect on children. And that got him into a lot of offices and a lot of dialogues about that, because that's a concern that it'd be hard pressed to meet a person that says, I don't care about children getting asthma and having a hard time breathing. Okay. And then you can have a discussion about the soot and the causes and the research and what can be done. And you build some common ground. And he was very effective at a national level in the sense that he was welcome in a lot of very conservative offices. So that's what I mean by knowing your opponents, their arguments, their motivations, and their concerns. So how do you interact with them in such a way that you can start a dialogue? So let's talk a little bit more detail. So step one is always vote. Whether it be local or what have you. If you don't vote, then, that is how this democracy is supposed to work. But do your homework, know your candidates. In terms of sustainability and things like this, one of the things SJC did was put out a questionnaire to the local candidates and answers, so you could see where they stood on various issues. Now, one of the things that can happen is they've made responses, right? So you could say, hey, you promised during your campaign X, Y, Z. What are you doing about it? So knowing your candidates. So, you don't have an unlimited number of choices, but you can make the choices. To do that well, you need to know what the issues are that are important to you. And so you can make an informed judgment. And I'm going to make one other comment here when you talk about issues. It's impossible for any one individual to know all the ins and outs of every issue. You're going to be hard pressed to really know one issue well. So what that means is, in a broader perspective, to get a network of like-minded people that are working on other issues, so they can help inform you. So you're not in this alone. The burden is not all on you, but that network will allow you to stay informed in a way that makes sense. So being informed is not necessarily doing everything yourself. Please don't demand perfection of the people you're talking to. One, they're human beings. They have different, if they're sensible people, going to have different perspectives. You may feel that it's two lousy choices and you have to choose the better one. That seems to be often the case in this country, but so be it. Choose the better one. But be an informed voter. Okay. Step two. This is small. I apologize. This is small. Communicate. So my friends that have been doing this for a lot longer than I have and on a national level gave me would tell me the following things, and I'll pass it along. And I've sort of found this to be true too. In order of effectiveness, from top to bottom, most effective to least effective, meet with a representative one-on-one, if you can. National level, that may be difficult. Okay. But if you can meet with them and talk with them and know your stuff and impress them that you know your stuff and communicate well with them, that's going to be your most effective. Call or meet with the representative staff. They believe me, the staff will communicate what they're finding to the representative. And that's an area, especially if they trust you, you build up a relationship with them, and they know you, that's going to be a positive. Write an original letter, not one that's canned or one that is supplied to you. Oh, and don't be disappointed if what you get back is a canned response, or that you get back, they don't understand which bin to put you in, and therefore you get very little response. But a letter that you show, that your formal letter shows that you spent some time and effort on it. Email on the website, if it's original, true. Click on the support cause or website of the email sent to you is probably your least effective. There's at least one representative I've known that said that when he finds out that there's 15,000 people that are clicked on this one email, he counts it as one response. 2, be kind, considerate, and respectful. You will not be hurt if you're not. Even no matter what you think about them and their position, be kind, considerate, and respectful. Okay. Know your subject. Know the arguments against your position and have arguments for them. Have good arguments for them. Center those on facts, data, and hard things, especially things that might be important to the person you're talking to. Believe me, and I see it myself when I'm having a conversation with somebody. Somebody comes up and says something to you that is just off the wall, and you know it's off the wall, and you know they haven't done serious research. You'll be polite, you'll be respectful, and whatnot, but it's going to have very little influence on my thought, and theirs as well. Be able to state your case briefly. My friends call this the elevator talk. Something you put on a 3x5 card, something you can converse with somebody as you're going between floors in an elevator. One issue, and know what you want to have happen. It's to state it clearly and concisely. I mean, they say, explain it the time it takes an elevator to travel between floors, fit it legibly on a 3x5 card. This is sort of like a business card in the sense that if you can make an impression this way, that might lead to an extended conversation or something like, well, why don't you talk to my staff member, or could you give me something more? It's hopeful to increase the dialogue. Okay. At worst case, it's going to go and listen. Somebody's going to say, okay, we've had 25 phone calls this week on X, Y, and Z. That's okay. There have been 25 phone calls. Okay. Another thing is to advocate. So that has a bunch of meetings, but I would plead to you to share your research with other people. Like I said, no one can be an expert in everything. Other people have different orientations, but make sure your research is done well. And I'm going to say this because AI is all the rage at the moment. AI often gives you the consensus opinion, and that's fine so far as it goes. But you may be arguing something that's not a consensus opinion. Okay, so you have to do your research and do it carefully and make sure you can back up what you want to say and figure out what arguments work and what arguments don't. So share your research with others, and if you think about the paper you might have had written in school where you had a footnote and cite your sources, make sure you have that information available. And I've said this before, it bears repeating. Listen, I said, listen, really listen to those opposing viewpoints. We tend to listen to people with the idea of, how do I respond? And that's not what I'm talking about. The goal to listening is to hear them and to try to figure out where they're coming from. Empathy is a good word for part of that. It's not a listening to solve. It's not a listening to persuade. It's not a listening to find a counter argument. It's a listening to hear the individual and to hear where they're coming from. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have very little chance of truly persuading them. So things that you think, why are they thinking the way they are? What's the background? What's the motivation for this? Where are they coming from? And if you do that, you might find that there's some areas you have in common. Like my friend that decides to look at not climate change, but in terms of asthma to get away into the discussion. So maybe you two are avid fishermen. Maybe you both like a certain park, but find something in common if you can, and then use that to have a conversation about your concerns about that, and listen to their concerns about that. And you might find that there's some things you can agree on. It's about building relationships. So I'm not saying that simply marching in the streets is not a good idea, but it certainly gets public attention and things. But if you want to have a policymaker who doesn't think the same way you do, if you want to move them a little bit, I think building a relationship is a good way of starting that. Okay. I'm going to pause here and see whether there's any questions or comments. No? Okay.
And you should know I'm putting some stuff in the chat as well
Okay.
to back up David.
Okay.
You can take a look at that. But do you want to open it up to a discussion for a few minutes,
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. So if you don't have access to a mic, tell us in the chat. If you do have access to a mic, chime in. Angeline, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
What do you think?
Um, yeah, I definitely agree that like these are steps that voters should definitely take before voting, since like you shouldn't just vote for a person without like knowing what they're standing for, because then you're not voting for yourself. You're just voting like just to vote.
Sure. And voting does matter, as David said at the outset, but also it's about advocacy, and advocacy is not just with politicians, right? It could happen at Thanksgiving dinner, and you're talking to people, the idea is not to debate them. That's the critical thing I think that David is trying to convey. This is not a contest, whose ideas are better than whose. It's about persuasion, and the hardest part about persuasion is active listening, which is a point David has emphasized a number of times.
And the other thing I would add to that is that it's not on the slide. Don't underestimate the power of a well-phrased question. Okay. I don't mean an irony or sarcastic. I mean an honest question.
From the gut.
Yeah. Because that forces your conversation partner to think. A good question is not one that has a yes or no answer. It's one that opens up a space for dialogue. And that takes some thought sometimes. So, voting is important. Making an informed voting is important, and for if you have an issue that grabs you, might call it calling. If there's something that at some point in life has just grabbed you and said, this is one of the things I'm going to be doing for my life, is advocating for this, then that's an issue in which you could be starting to communicate with your representatives. If it's a local issue, locally. If it's a state issue, working in the state. If it's a national issue, working nationally. Or maybe you start local and work up nationally. But that's more than voting. That kind of advocacy is getting out there and doing the legwork and talking to people, maybe writing or maybe even, as I've often done, writing pieces for other people that are, say, more vocal than you are, giving them the input. Yeah. Anybody else? Maureen?
Iron, you haven't spoken yet. Do you have a mic? Can you take a second? Okay. Go ahead, David.
All right. So a couple things. Again, I apologize if this is small. There are a couple things you should know about governments and markets. Yeah, maybe not this. Okay. Yeah. I think I want you to take it along for a while. We'll see where this goes, Ash.
Okay.
If we want to get more into the markets and things like that, I'm happy to share some more in that area.
Okay. So before I start mine, Charlie, you want to take a crack at telling us what you see here and why you're here or anything like that?
Hi, yeah, I just discovered you all. I guess it was yesterday. I'm actually
Okay.
applying for a grant related to climate. I should introduce myself. I'm a director of a center for healthy and resilient communities at Montclair State University.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in sustainability and resilience and environmental resilience issues. And we're a new center. I was just brought in November, so we don't have a lot of projects yet, but I'm also living and been in Weehawken for a while.
Mhm.
And I just wrote in the chat do you go by Ash or Ashwani?
Ash is fine. Ash is
Ash,
fine.
that I live in Weehawken and I've just been, I think the best word is frustrated with the town's approach to sustainability and climate issues. And I don't really know. I mean, maybe I just don't know, but I haven't really gotten any communications from them about it or really sensed a concern. So I know there are a lot of initiatives, in Hudson County, particularly in Hoboken and Jersey City and Bayonne. But Weehawken, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when you were
yeah.
talking just now about how to approach your politicians, because I know the mayor and I know some of the towns council people, it's like you're talking to a brick wall, So
It
I just
is.
don't even know how to interact with them at this point. And I hate
Yeah.
to say it that way because I really come at things with open mind, and we don't know each other yet, but it sounds maybe differently. But I really have tried to work with them on other issues related to school and so on. So I kind of have an idea that with climate issues, it's going to be the same thing. But I could be wrong, so I'm just curious.
No, no,
Go
no.
ahead.
Think about this. There's a
Yeah.
reason why lobbyists are so highly paid, right?
Yeah.
It's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift. So your center, you said,
Yes.
at one. Okay, it's not the same as the PSE&G Institute.
It's not. We are connecting with them, but yeah, we're not.
Okay, we should talk offline.
Yeah.
Okay, so Aryan, you still there? Maureen, anything you want to add?
Um,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
I,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
okay. I was just going to say, like, I guess in terms of or let me turn my camera on real quick. I guess like in terms of advocacy, I guess that's what I'm thinking of right now isn't necessarily related to like sustainability or the environment, but I definitely
It's
think
all
that
related. It's
um,
all related.
I was gonna say that advocacy is really important, and I feel like at least for younger people, a lot of the ways that we try to advocate is through social media. Um, I'm sure that you guys have um not to like go into a sensitive topic, but I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about like the ICE raids happening and everything like that. And one of the most instantaneous ways that people advocate is through like reposting or sharing videos or posts and related to like all that stuff going on. And, given like what we see right now in the government, I think it's like really important more than ever to vote, not just like for who's going to be the next president, but also like within your city or your state, like who's going to be your next representative, things like that. And that can, of course, also translate into the environment and what your representative or who you're voting for stands for.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we're at 7:36. Let me just briefly share some of my slides with you. I won't spend much time on them because I think they will be shared with you after the session and you can look at them in more detail. I came at this a little differently than David, which is why we make a good team because we come at things differently. I put a link to the issue of framing in the chat. You should definitely look at the Framework Institute. They have a lot of public policy stuff where they argue that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And there's a pollster, a Republican pollster called Frank Luntz, who wrote a book called Words That Work. It's not what you say, it's what they hear. And those are two good ideas to keep in mind if you're going to do advocacy and lobbying and persuasion and giving good reasons and those kinds of things. I came at this from the point of view, well, what can governments and public sector do as in moving the market towards sustainability? And I'm not going to spend time on the slides. I'll just show you the headlines. So there are examples of government and public sector efforts to move markets towards a green transition. There are. And we can find them, right? We can change how government buys things. We can change how we invest. We can change how we collaborate. We can offer policy incentives and financial support. The reason I'm going through this list is because if you do want to get involved in the community and change, you should know what kind of levers are available to you to pull, right? So it is possible to urge for policy. Let me give you an example. New York City, Zohran Mamdani, mayor, made a campaign promise, okay, for city-owned grocery stores. All right? I'm a planner by training. I've taught sustainability for a couple of decades. And I know that's a bad idea. But there was an alternative proposal made on NPR in Brian Lehrer's show, where this guy said the best thing to do to make food affordable in Manhattan, in New York, is to let in the top 10 grocery store chains. And they take care of it. My argument is there's a whole other way of looking at this, right? If you look at food sustainability, what you find is that there's a huge concern, starting with the idea of farmers' markets. People realize the most difficult thing about farmers' markets is bringing the farmers to the market. That's a heavy lift, and very few have the resources to do that. So they came up with the idea of food hubs. Farmers bring all their produce to a hub, and the hub then distributes to retailers. Right? So you section out the supply chain. If they set up a supply chain like that in New York City, they have industrial sites that are not close to residential where they could dedicate space to to a series, a network of food hubs. Then it would be very simple if they gave property tax relief to small grocery stores, bodegas, for them to set up a chain of neighborhood grocery stores. The supply chain is taken care of by the food hub. You make it affordable because local grocers operate to the smallest margin. They're the least likely to make a profit. So you encourage. So what I think the point I'm trying to make is policy incentives are a reasonable alternative to market interventions, right? Then there's the government does consume. All institutions consume. So there's a whole literature on green procurement. Right? What do you buy? How do you buy it? Where do you buy it from? Does each town buy it individually? From a planning perspective, home rule. New Jersey is a home rule state. Every municipality demands total control over their school board, their police department, their fire department. Given the layout of New Jersey, how does that make sense? Why would two adjacent towns have independent police departments? Where's the sense in that? I'm not talking about centralization, I'm talking about distributed generation. Anyways, so green procurement is another piece. And then research, case studies, collaborative projects, bringing business and entrepreneurs and people like Charlie into the conversation to come up with innovative solutions that can be implemented towards the transition. And then there's local infrastructure investment, right? Pennsylvania has done a lot with green infrastructure. Lancaster and Philadelphia, they've really taken green infrastructure and made it their own. If you go to Philadelphia now, they have signage of green infrastructure everywhere. Everyone's aware of it and they know what it's doing. So those kinds of things are really persuasive. And then there's more than one way to push for change in City Hall. There is, right? It doesn't mean you go and lobby City Hall. If you can build a relationship with the mayor and his or her administration, that's a good thing. You should try to do that. Use LinkedIn as one way of making connection, right? LinkedIn is a good place. That's where I make all my connections with Jersey City people. Or you can write a letter to an editor in a newspaper. That's pushing for change as well. You're building public support. I think the most important piece of all of this is that if a transition towards sustainability and climate action is important to you, and if it is true, which I maintain it is, that neither climate change nor sustainability are problems that can ever be terminally solved. You'll never come to an endpoint. Sustainability is not a destination. It's a pathway. Climate action is not solving climate change. It's making a difference to the impact we have on the climate. We can reduce it, we can increase it, we can control it. We can't make it go away. Climate change was here before we were, as a phenomenon. So the fact that we call it climate change itself leads us up the wrong path. Okay, that's all I have to share, so I'll stop that. We have 15 minutes, I think. Or is it 8:30? When do we end? I forget.
I think it's up to us.
It's up to us. Okay. All right. No, actually, it's up to you folks. Because if you want to talk, we can talk. David has lots of experience on the ground. And he comes at it from a in planning, we make a distinction between countries of the north and countries of the south. And that language comes from, it was an alternative to first world, second world, third world. And the reason north and south are chosen as designations is because if you look at an atlas or a globe, if you will, and you look at the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, you'll notice that almost all first world countries are in the temperate zone, either above or below the tropics. Almost all. And almost all the developing countries are in the tropics. So there's north, countries of the north, countries of the south. Right? And the reason I mention that is because David's roots come from a concern for disenfranchised. What's the right way to put it, David? You take it.
I kind of like the word marginalized.
Okay. Disempowered?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and then I'll make the comment that most of my work has, prior to my joining SJC, has been on the national and the international level. So one of my motivations for joining SJC was to get more experience at the sort of the local level stuff. But yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. So if the old designation we had was first world, second world, or the developed world, the developing of the world, the undeveloped world, and of course the indigenous populations just fell off the map in the way of speaking. They've adopted some of them have adopted the idea of a fourth world peoples. But and I'll talk a little personally. So coming from a theological background, I'm currently in an Episcopal church. Part of the large part of the concern of New Testament theology has been the concern for the marginalized, the powerless, the hungry, the thirsty, the people that are sick, imprisoned, and there's always
the voiceless.
Yeah, voiceless. And someone once made a comment, I wish I remember who it was a historian that studied the history of cities and agricultural settings. So going back to some early summer, which was one of the first big agricultural cities, he said one of the characteristics of these big cities is that there's always been what he called the disposable class. Armies, when times were tough and you couldn't support some, they were the ones that suffered. And the ethical in me, the theologian in me, says that that's largely where our concern needs to be placed. And there was a understanding that we came to in the 70s that you cannot solve environmental issues independently of social justice issues. And you cannot solve social justice issues independent of environmental issues. The two are fundamentally linked. Now, one of the biggest disparities is between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, Africa, Latin America, not that Australia is somewhat developed clearly in the south, but there's this disparity. And so, and I will say that in the U.S. discussions, that disparity is often lost. So that's my international perspective. But it exists here in the U.S. as well. So yeah, I'll get off my stump now.
No. Thank you. That was useful. So, Aryan, you haven't said anything. Do you want to chime in? If you have a mic? No? Okay. So, can we talk about if we do these kinds of sessions once a month, we'll take a topic, and whether it's other speakers or the two of us, we unpack some key questions that are worth asking, and wanted to make this more of a discussion virtually. Do you folks have ideas on how we can do this? Have you seen models that work?
Well, I can jump in as a classroom teacher 20 years. So I think that, a lot of times having if there's like maybe a slide with questions, that might be helpful because sometimes folks don't always feel comfortable jumping in, asking their own. I mean, a lot of people do, but not everybody, particularly folks who are more shy. Um, but I do like your model, having the slides and having some content first, because obviously it gives us a lot of food for thought and reflection. So, and sometimes I think it was Maureen brought up the ice raids, which actually I just was talking about in my class before this Zoom, because I was talking about in terms of hospital admissions and healthcare issues. But so I think the more we talk about it, the more important it is, and I think that it always piques a little bit of interest to bring in topical issue, current event issues. So.
But if I take that as an example, okay, I live on the eastern. I used to live in Jersey City. I now live on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake. Farming community, pretty conservative in general. So the question becomes in dealing with ISIS, how do you do a dialogue with the more conservative community in a way that impacts them, even though there's not a lot of activity here? And that becomes an interesting. I meant that as an open question, right? It's not a question that necessarily has answers. But that's where the dialogue is important, right? And we can get on social media and we can get all our friends to agree about it. And that's may feel good, but that doesn't necessarily do very much. The question is how
Changing things is really hard. We all glibly talk about you need to change your worldview first, right? You need to change how you look at the world first. How do you teach somebody to change their worldview in a particular direction? It can't be done. It happens. It's like Zen Buddhism, right? Satori. You have an awakening, but you can't turn a switch and make it happen. So change becomes a really arduous process of back and forth. Currently in sustainability, for instance, there's a huge buzz around this term regenerative. People are talking about regenerative capitalism, regenerative economics, regenerative investment, everything regenerative. And the basic idea behind it is that, in their opinion, sustainability is just about avoiding harm. And regeneration is about making things better. And I buy that. I do. But it's not, we have this thing about the shiny new toy on the shelf, right? Somebody called it the recency bias. If it's a new idea, we are attracted to it. If it's an old idea, we've tried this, we've been there, we've done that. It doesn't matter. But it's cyclical, right? You find the first mention of regenerative as a concept in 1927. It's been around for a long time. Just the context has changed a little bit. The players have changed. In evolution theory, there's a distinction between evolution at the level of the individual and evolution at the level of the group. An individual goes through the cycle of life of conception, birth, youth, and etc., up to death. That's one evolutionary perspective. And we take that perspective to be an evolutionary perspective, and we apply it to everything. Cities, young cities, decaying cities, right? Things like that. There's another kind of evolution, and that is at the level of the group, which is not a bell curve. I'm sorry, sloping, upward sloping. There's things that go back and forth. So making space for chance becomes a very important point to keep in mind if change making is what you care about. So thoughts on what you'd like to hear? Would you come back for something like this? And if so, what would you like to talk about? What's relevant to your lives? Adeline, you want to go first?
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I think I would, yeah, definitely like to come again to this meeting. Yeah. Um, I don't know, like, I guess we could like discuss like I guess stuff that's happening today um in the world, in America, and like also like yeah, like topics about sustainability and environmental impact. Yeah.
Good. We'll take that. Aryan, if you have a mic, do you want to chime in? Okay, Maureen, you want to go?
Um, yeah, I would definitely come back. Um, I I did enjoy the conversation that we just had. I thought it was pretty interesting. Talking about like, the government and all and what we can do. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a topic that I'm interested in. I guess like off the top of my head, what I'm thinking about right now are um if you guys know like part of Sustainable Jersey City like or SJC, like one part of what we do is talking about like air quality monitoring and like the relationship between like, air quality and like our health. I think maybe that could be interesting to talk about, or maybe discussing like climate change and just like everything that's happening with that. Or something I've always been interested in was fast fashion. That's a topic that I feel like, in my opinion, is really popular among like younger people. Like I feel like whenever we're doing like environmental projects, here at Rutgers, like fast fashion is like always at least like one group's project or topic. But yeah, that's what I have.
Just muted myself and then started to talk. So the point I try to make is that you take any aspect of human interest and you can tie it to sustainability, right? It's not just environmental. And what we tried to do at Ramapo College is we tried. It didn't quite work out. for various reasons, was to link sustainability to every single minor and major in the college. You can make connections between anthropology and sustainability. You can make connections between business management and sustainability. You can make connections between accounting and sustainability. There's actually an institute for sustainability accounting. There are people that make the argument that sustainability at its core is an accounting problem. It's how you count the costs. What do you include and what do you exclude? If you look only at money, that brings you to the triple bottom line. So there are costs and there are prices. And the price is what you pay out of your wallet in the marketplace. The cost is what all of us are paying collectively across all domains, not just in cash. And my favorite saying is, the price is not the same thing as cost, right? It's not. And if you can't make that differentiation, then we're trapped in the market paradigm. So David's work is tightly tied. Theology is not my field. My only experience with that world is the missionaries in India in disaster relief. And I have a solid respect for those people. They were out there on the front lines every day. Cyclone hits, they're there. And sure, there's religion involved and there's missionary work involved and there's all that, but they're out there making a difference. And you have to have solid respect for people that can do that day in and day out. So becoming a change maker is a really good aspiration to have, whatever your occupation is.
Yeah, Thank you, Ash, for that. And I would have, and to some extent, well, to a large extent, I would say that the sustainability, climate, environmental issues are driven by our mindset, the way we think about life on the planet here and whatnot. They're driven by, you go to the store and part of it is balancing budget versus the food you eat and things like that. That food you buy may have strongly negative consequences in terms of the farming and the soil health and things like that, have sustainability issues, but you still have to pay for it, right? So it's an institutional problem, it's a mindset problem, it's a choice-making problem. And so that goes to philosophy. It goes to the religion. You use it with the thought of worldview. It goes to an experience. So many ways. But how do you change people's mind? Well, let's use the example of ICE. I think if you're conservative and you suddenly have friends that are impacted by that, it's going to have an impact. Whether you can globalize that experience or not is another issue. Whether there's somebody there that can walk you through that, and people that defend environmental tourism say, well, people need to see the effects of the environment. I'm going, well, you can't afford to take, billions of people on environmental tourists. So how do you do it without that? Well, maybe that's a role thing. So all of this, I get to agree with Ash. Everything is ultimately related. If for no other reason, everything is related to how we think about it.
I say it's a little different. Everything is relatable.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything is connectable. You just have to look.
Yeah.
The connections are there. Okay.
You have to be willing to look.
Yeah. True. Charlie, do you want to talk about Weehawken a little bit and what's happening there?
Well, I guess thank you. I guess I don't really have a big update or anything, but I just, I've lived here for almost 5 years, like I was saying earlier, and
In Weehawken.
Yeah, in Weehawken, I live not far from 495, so it's kind of
Okay.
right by that main road. Um, and what I've noticed here is that it's kind of like two different towns, right? There's the town by the waterfront, which is actually the continuation of Hoboken, West New York, up to Edgewater, that really are affected by climate issues because anytime there's major water issue, flooding water, there's going to be flooding there. And then when there's the folks who live on the high part, so I'm basically in the Palisades, right? And so during Superstorm Sandy, the Shades, which is the area just north of Hoboken, flooded 6 feet or more water. Okay. So it's a pretty serious consequence of climate change, as far as I can tell. But Hoboken and Jersey City both have sustainability offices and climate people working full time, and I don't see that type of approach in Weehawken. Now, there might be some plan going on, but I don't know about. There might be some connection to the county. I'd love to learn more if there is, but my sense is that knowing the politics here in Weehawken, that they're probably not doing that. It's a very old school, very old Jersey approach to things, where you kind of have to know the neighbor and been here for 20 years, and then you have some type of political clout, which I kind of see as anti-American because I really think you should be able to speak out no matter where you live, no matter how long you've been there. But
Yep.
anyways, that's my own 2 cents. So I don't know how to really approach the town about climate issues because I do think living here that you should have some say. That just seems to go without saying. I don't know.
So rather than deal with climate issues, flooding is an issue.
Yeah, you could change the language maybe.
Yeah. And well, if you deal with the flooding, you are in fact dealing with an aspect of climate change, which then leads into a discussion.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's crazy is that, this is as far as I can tell, the tax coffers are pretty well, greased here in Weehawken. So I don't think it's a finance or resource issue. They're building a brand new performing arts center on the waterfront, which, we're not a very big town compared to Hoboken, Jersey City or Union City. So, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those it's really a conundrum for me. Maybe the idea is to go through different, like Brian Stack is the mayor of Union City, and he's been pretty, he seems pretty approachable. Maybe it's better to go at the state level and talk to state people instead. I don't know. It's another option.
Hmm. But you folks are in my geography is not that good because I haven't lived in that area. Isn't Weehawken in the shadow of Hoboken?
It's kind of a funny geography, but it's just north of Hoboken, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And Hoboken's doing a lot of stuff.
Oh,
So
it's tons. It's the
I,
New York Times. They have tons of stuff.
yeah. So I just ran a search. This is what I do when I don't know something. I look and I asked the question, are there sustainability initiatives in Weehawken? And the answer I got was that Sustainable Jersey for Schools is doing the most work
Hmm.
in Weehawken. So
Okay.
you may want to look at K through 12 or the school district as a way to engage sustainability. That's one possibility.
Yeah.
City Hall, I don't know Weehawken at all. I don't know who the players are, but that may not be the right place to come in. You should be able to search for community groups in Weehawken and maybe find one that's a multi-issue group
Well,
that touches on
I
what
did
you.
do some searching, and that's how I found you guys.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
But
All right.
to be honest with you, for considering, and this is not, I'm not trying to criticize anyone, but
Yeah.
considering that all these towns I just mentioned, Bayonne, Jersey City, Hoboken, West New York, are so vulnerable to climate change. The
Yes.
response here is underwhelming. It's just underwhelming. I don't know how else to put it. I did talk to the town planner today, Sue Mack, if you guys know her at Bayonne, and she seems to really have her ear on the wall, what's going on. She said there was a New Jersey State climate resiliency project between 2020 and 2024.
Yeah.
It sounded great, it was wonderful, but then the state pulled the funding. So it's been a year and a
Yeah.
half and there's no funding for that project. So my idea, and I don't know, I'm just talking off the cuff here, so you guys can tell me if I'm out of place or out of line. I'm happy to take direction. But it's that, we need to restart this initiative. We need to keep this going. If the state's not going to fund it with cash, we can do it, other way. I mean, I'm not trying to be silly, but we
Yeah,
can do it other ways. I think we really need to keep that initiative going because these cities, and particularly Hudson County and Bergen County, are extremely vulnerable. And you guys know this, but they're extremely vulnerable to climate change.
So perhaps one of the questions to start off with is to try to get a sense of why it's not being discussed.
I agree.
Because if you just try to force the issue without understanding why there's sort of this silence, you may not get anywhere. If you can understand the reasons, then you might be able to figure out a way of migrating moving the discussions around. And I'll give you an example from here. My conversations, I've only been here a couple of years. Like I said, it's very strong. We're the same way. Eastern shore of Chesapeake Bay, low level lying land. Sea level rise is impacting. We're literally losing islands. They're disappearing. Old
yeah.
pictures, we have entire towns on an island. Is now there's a famous picture of what the last house has finally fallen down and the island is no more. And so you would think sea level rise would be a big thing, and it's not. And you ask the more about as well, they'll tell you the land is sinking. Well, there's a bit of truth to that. The land is sinking on a geological timescale. But rather than fight that, you say, okay, I'll go with that. Now, what do we do about it? Because there's clearly a concern. So if you can find out language and what's motivating people and why there's a silence on it, that might lead you to a way of having a conversation that makes a difference.
One other thing I'll add, Charlie. Turner, your mayor, his term is up June of this year. If you really want to get engaged with policy at City Hall, you've got to tune into that conversation.
Yes.
What I would do if I were in your place is there are 4 people on the council. I would get contact information for all 4 of them, reach out to them one by one individually, and see if there's resonance with any of those people with the issues you care about. Right? The way we did it in Jersey City, I don't live in Jersey City. Deborah and I met when we started Sustainable Jersey City. I was teaching at Rampo College. I'd just come from Los Angeles, and I used to be deeply involved in community work there. So I looked for a community to engage with here, and I saw Jersey City. And then by chance, Deborah happened to come to Rampo College. I was invited to the meeting, and because I was doing sustainability, and we connected, right? But the way we did it was the first move we made after we did pilot projects and when we started Sustainable Jersey City, we went to the most likely candidate for the next mayor, Mayor Fulop, Steve Fulop. We met with him before the election, and we presented him with a platform on sustainability. If you are becoming a mayor, would you consider these ideas? So if you get the candidates into a conversation, and I'm sure it's possible to find out who the people are that are running to replace Turner.
Well, it's just to interject, Turner's been the mayor for 42 or 3 years. And
Okay.
I was in the taxi going to Newark a few months ago, and the taxi driver said, well, his family has been running Weehawken for over 100 years. So I don't think he's going to be changing, as my understanding. That's similar to Eastern Shore. This kind of old boys network stuff. Because I used to live in Baltimore and Delaware. I know a little bit too. But my point is that Jersey, I mean, I'm not focusing on changing candidates, but I do think sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, sometimes with politicians. And that's why I appreciate the first part of this presentation, because you were talking about some of those issues.
And it takes
But I don't
trust.
know how much change you can affect. I do think with someone like James Solomon, who I met actually last summer at some fair, community fair, and so I met him briefly, and I brought up climate issues to him, and he seemed somewhat interested. And he's younger, right? So hopefully he has that on his radar for his kids. But I think that's someone who probably we can affect more change with. Maybe someone like him, someone like Brian Stack, the new mayor of Hoboken, Emily Kabur. I'm not sure you're saying her last name right.
Yeah.
I see more of that. I'm not hopeful about Weehawken, but I live here, so I also feel like because when you live in a place, you should have a say, and I'm paying pretty high taxes, so I would like to have some type of input, but are they going to
Yep.
listen? That's what you don't know. You can only do so much.
Do you have kids?
I don't know if that's relevant, but
No, no, no,
I do
no. In the sense,
care about
no,
this
but
place.
I'm not prying.
Yeah.
Sustainable Jersey is a statewide organization that helps municipalities move towards sustainability. They have Sustainable Jersey for schools. That is very active in Weehawken.
Right. Well, that gets back to what I was saying earlier about going to the state level, right?
Yeah.
Because the local folks sometimes don't. Just a silly example, but here in Jersey, there are laws about having buses exhaust being emitted more than 15 minutes.
Idling.
Nobody respects that, at least in Weehawken. The
Uh,
buses are idling for half an hour, 45 minutes. Who do I complain to? I've tried calling the New Jersey Environment Protection, no one answers the phone.
yep.
The citizen response networks here are really weak, as far as I could tell, for state stuff. But I do agree with you. There are state protections. So then it becomes this question of how do you get involved? And I think you're right. The education piece is probably the best.
Anyways, good luck. Seriously, good luck.
Thank
And
you.
if
I
we can
appreciate
help along
that.
the way,
I
we're
hope we
here.
can keep talking about these things.
Absolute.
Sure.
Absolute. Um, Algeline, Maureen, if you're still connected, do you want to say anything in closing? Or just say goodbye. I'm okay with that.
I
Hey,
don't
Maureen.
think I didn't have really anything to add, but yeah, I enjoyed the presentation and the conversation. It was cool like listening to the three of you. You guys were like really locked in.
Where are you at Rutgers in your education? Are you undergrad, grad?
Oh, I'm undergraduate. Yeah, I'm
What's your
a
major?
sophomore. Oh,
What's your
I'm doing
major?
chemical engineering.
Okay. And does that fill your ticket for graduation, or do you have space to take other courses?
Um, I think I still have like some space to like take up a minor maybe, which is like a
Do
lot
it.
less credits than just a major.
I know. I know. I taught for a very long time. So take a minor. And if
Okay.
you're a sophomore, this is the time to take the minor. Don't wait, because courses are offered weird semesters,
Yeah.
times. It gets complicated. Okay, I used to specialize in that, getting students to take minors. And you should definitely consider taking a minor.
But yeah, I've been wanting to like I don't know, I feel like chemical engineering is very like math heavy. Well, I mean it is
Uh-huh.
engineering, so I wanted to do something more like life sciences, like microbiology, because that's something I'm interested
Uh-huh.
in. Or even like
Okay.
business. I feel like business is applicable everywhere. So
Yes. Eh, So, are you familiar with Google Scholar?
um is it
Look
like
it up.
the
Scholar.google.com.
okay.
It's a database of all scholarly articles that Google has compiled over the years that most of them are available as PDFs, but it's a
Oh.
database.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what I would do in your place is I would go to that database, I would put chemical engineering in quotations,
Okay.
and then add whatever interest you have after that. So if it's sustainability, chemical engineering, in quotes, with sustainability or life science or whatever you're interested. It will tell you how many articles are in the database. It will give you an overview of what those articles are about and give you ideas that you couldn't imagine without that information. You can't sit in your head and figure out the connection. You have to go out into the web.
Yeah.
Run multiple searches. Seriously.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I think I heard of Google Scholar, but I never really like knew what it was.
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
is so fire. Yeah, I just looked it up and it has like a lot of cool stuff here.
Yeah. So in Google Scholar, on the right-hand side, if it says PDF or HTML, that article is available in full text from that page. The
Hmm.
others are not. So
Right.
scan the titles to get an idea of what the connectivities are between these two fields.
Hmm.
And you see the number of articles that pop up that shows you how popular it is,
Hmm.
right? So it adds up. It adds up.
And the nice thing about being a student is if you find an article that's not available, you go to the library.
Yep.
Librarians are usually pretty good at getting articles that students and people need. So is it's not in the library, pretty sure they'll have an interlibrary loan, they can get it for you.
Yep.
So make friends with a
Or,
librarian.
yeah. Research librarian.
Yeah.
Research librarian. Alternatively, if you look at an abstract of a paper and you have the corresponding author's name, I've found they respond immediately. Send them an email. I don't have access to this PDF. I'm a student. I'm looking at this. Would you share a PDF? 9 times out of 10, I get a response the same day.
Really?
You just have to ask. Okay,
Okay.
all right. Azaleen, last call.
Um, I had a lot of fun during this discussion. Yeah, I think I really enjoyed it. And I like the topics you guys were talking about. And yeah.
I may have missed it when you introduced yourself, but what's your background?
My name is Algeline. I'm actually a junior in high school right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And what's your sort of trajectory?
Um, I'm kind of interested in like going into medical
Mhm.
right now.
Okay,
In the
okay.
field.
Any particular aspect of the medical field?
I'm not sure, but maybe like I might go into nursing. Maybe,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So the same advice I gave Maureen, I'll give to you. I tried really hard to start a nursing sustainability program at Rampo College. There's a huge intersection between nursing and climate change and sustainability. There's an organization called ANHE, ANHE. Search that on the web, add the word nursing, it'll pop up. You'll see there's lots of stuff going on, right? You just have to look for the right sort of mix that appeals to you. We used to have a master's program in sustainability. It fell by the wayside because of low enrollment. One of my first students in that program is now Director of Sustainability at Hackensack Meridian Hospital,
Oh, that's really cool.
right? He came to the program. It's a 2-year program. Second semester of the first year, I asked him, where do you want to go? He mentioned the word health. So I pointed him at looking at connectivities between health and sustainability. And he found all the hospitals in the US that had a sustainability initiative. And he contacted all of them. And he gathered data. What are they doing? How are they doing it? What are the problems? got himself an unpaid internship at Hackensack, turned it into a paid internship, turned that into a paid job, and worked his way up to director of sustainability. What I'm saying to you is, you're not pawns. You're not being blown in the wind. You have a voice, right? And you should really use that voice to mark your preferences. There's a fellow at MIT who said, the future cannot happen until you get there.
Mm,
Burn that in your mind. You'll be fine.
that's a very good quote. Yeah, I would definitely, yeah.
You have time. You have a lifetime. Use it. Okay. Anything else? Can we wrap up, David?
Yep, that's fine. So thank you all for coming. Enjoyed the conversation. And we hope you'll come to these in the future. We're now thinking about what the next steps are, the next topics will be. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So